Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. The question today, which I pose to you in this video, is what exactly are you prepping for? It's got to the point where I'm beginning to question, are my preps going to work? Is what I'm prepping for a logical scenario? Because in all honesty, what we've experienced over the last few years is telling me it's getting so random, so extreme, that many of the traditional forms of prepping are just going out the window. A case in point. 2 nights ago, it was about 8:30, or about 8:20 in the evening, and I'm sitting in my office upstairs in my house, sitting on a big heavy armchair, working on the edit for the Israel-Gaza video. It's dark outside, it's very, very cold, and suddenly I hear a noise in the wall next to me. Now in my house that's nothing unusual. It's normally mice, edible dormice, shrews. Something is running around in the walls. If you hear thump, 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 thump above your head in the attic, it'll be a pine marten chasing some prey. So this is pretty common. Normally if I have them annoying me next to my head in the wall, I'll just bang on the wall and tell them to move on. However, within a few seconds, my heavy armchair started to move, and it felt like it was doing this. In my head, I'm thinking somehow they've managed to get from the wall into the chair, and this is always a possibility that some rodent has made a nest in the back of a chair, and for some reason, maybe they were fighting or chasing each other, they were trying to escape. But this carried on, and I was actually feeling a little bit seasick from the chair moving so much. And then in my head I'm thinking it can't be mice, maybe it's edible dormice. And then this is happening in like milliseconds, my brain is processing this. Then I'm thinking, no, these are way too small to move this chair. So suddenly I'm shocked, and I'm thinking that maybe pine marten have got into the chair and they're trying to get out. The chair is still moving at this point, as am I. So I jump up, and I'm expecting to see a very enraged pine marten come out of the back of my chair. That's when I hear my wife from the bedroom, where she's lying on the bed watching the television, shout out, "Earthquake." Do you mean earthquake? We don't get earthquakes here. Then my brain finally processes the fact that there's no rodents moving heavy chairs and my slender frame. So maybe it is an earthquake. We quickly go downstairs into the kitchen. My daughter comes out of her bedroom and she's like, what the hell's happening? She was on her bed and that was moving. And I give each of them a lantern or a torch. And I say, we all go outside now. So we went out into the garden, and I got a torch, went around the house, checked to see if there'd been any structural damage, which, touch wood, there hadn't been. We go back into the house, and my first thought then is, this is a foreshock, and the big shock is coming, or this was the shock aftershocks are coming. We grab money, passports, car keys, some basic essentials, and we sit in the living room and wait to see if there's going to be another shock. And if there is, we'll just get out the house, get in the car, and drive back to the nearby town where we have a flat. And then that dawns on me as well. A flat is going to be a much more dangerous location to be during an earthquake than a house in a small village in the middle of nowhere, where we can literally just walk outside and watch it collapse if need be. In a flat, you're several stories up. If there's an earthquake, it's going to collapse on top of you. And this, I don't know why, but this stunned me. This revelation just shocked me, because that was always in the back of my mind. Okay, you know, there's an earthquake, we get out, we get in the car, we don't even need to put clothes on really, we can just drive to the flat, everything's already there for us, we'll just ride it out. But that doesn't work in an earthquake. And then my brain started processing again. What do you do? We don't get earthquakes here. I've been here 25 years. There has never been an earthquake here. And this turned out to be a 5 magnitude earthquake with its epicenter approximately 20-something miles away. What the hell? An earthquake. So I'm thinking it was pissing down outside, freezing cold, we can't use the flat, like where are you going to go, seriously? I mean, if this was a foreshock, the aftershock would trash the roads. I mean, everything here trashes the roads, so the roads would be impassable, which is one reason I keep the Land Rover Discovery. So I'm thinking, what do you do then? There's only 3 of us here. My 2 boys are away at the moment. You'd need a tent. Okay, so, you know, we've got tents. But the tents are in a storeroom. They're not easily accessible. You'd need winter sleeping bags which are capable of keeping you down to -10, -20 degrees, because when you see -20 on a sleeping bag, it doesn't mean -20, it means about +10, unless you're fully wrapped up inside the sleeping bag in like a cocoon shape. They're big. You'd need ground mats or an inflatable mattress. You'd need some heating source for 3 people. Now, we always talk about, in the prepping community, we talk about bug out bags. And I've got an immense bug out bag. It's even called bug out bag. My friend John from JP Outdoors, he gave it to me last time he visited. And that's super, but it doesn't have, you know, a 3-man tent attached, 3 winter sleeping bags, 3 carry mats, and maybe a gas stove, because this is what you would need if your house collapsed due to an earthquake in the middle of winter, which suddenly became a very real possibility which I'd never considered. Now, this year has been a very, very strange one. 3 months ago we had floods. Again, I've lived here for 25 years and we've never had floods here, ever. We've got a tiny stream at the end of my property, and it rained so heavily that my kitchen became flooded, and we're on a hill. Roads were washed away, bridges were washed away. The devastation in my local area was incredible. And what was crazy about this flooding was it was happening again and again and again. Every time it rained, it didn't just rain, it was like dumping the sea in a localized area. It just kept destroying everything. Cars in my village were washed away. And I've never experienced that in 25 years. So suddenly flooding becomes an issue. What do you need? A canoe? If you've ever seen a flood, yeah, you can maybe canoe in the aftermath, but during a flood, I mean, you've got massive trees going past. In the land directly opposite my stream, a giant willow tree fell down. Now luckily it landed on an empty field owned by another villager, but if it had fallen our way, it would have crushed half my house. I didn't even find this till a few days later. Immense willow tree. So we had floods, and now we've got an earthquake. Seriously, what the hell do you prep for? I don't even want to talk about 3 years ago when, if you remember, there was that little disease apparently going around. When that started, my family, we packed our things, left the flat and moved to our bug out location, which is our village house. And we just stayed. That was simple. Our way of life basically just continued while those stuck in major urban areas had to undergo many restrictions. Apart from losing work and social contacts and being reprogrammed to basically sit in a room and stare at a monitor 24 hours a day, we got through that quite easily. And then this year, the flood started. Now it's funny, when the flood hit us, it was very localised, and I'm pretty sure we were probably the first area of Europe to get it, because it wasn't even covered in international news. I mean, it was devastating. But at that time, the media abroad were covering the climate change blah blah about the incredible temperatures being suffered in the UK and in Europe, particularly Italy. And they didn't want to confuse people that why are you getting floods at the same time as you're getting 50 degrees temperature. So they ignored it. Well, they ignored it for a while. This summer, actually during the floods, we went to Croatia, to the Isle of Pashman. We had a very nice week there on the sea, very chill. After Pashman, we drove up into Italy to Prosecco, which I'm sure you've all heard of from the drink. And it was hot. And this was the same time that Western media was saying, oh, Italy's boiling alive. Yeah, it was hot, but it wasn't that hot. But then again, for the first time ever, they started measuring road temperatures rather than air temperature. And there's a huge difference. It was hot, but if you've ever wondered what $500 million looks like, it's this. This is a seized ship from a Russian oligarch parked in the harbour at the Italian city of Trieste, and it cost $500 million. It's a big ship. Anyway, when we finished what was apparently a deathly heat wave in Italy, we drove back, and the way we did it is we drove through the entire length of Slovenia, and it was terrible. It was just like a giant traffic jam all the way through, and it was hot. We then drove the entire length of Hungary, which again was another very, very hot traffic jam. But what was stunning is just after we returned home, Slovenia was hit with catastrophic flooding. I mean, horrific flooding. And it was so bad, Western media had to show it on the news. They'd ignored what we'd been through, but they had to show this because it just washed cities away. And we'd just been on those roads. That's how close we were to being washed away from basically a biblical flood. Now these biblical floodings are happening all over the world. It's funny that they're not showing what happened in New York. That was a real surprise. But these are happening everywhere, as are earthquakes. But these are two things which, these are natural disasters which are very, very difficult to prep for. Like really difficult to prep for. If you've ever seen what a flood looks like, you have very little time to get out. The only way really of surviving a flood is not being in a place where you're going to get hit by a flood. And from what I experienced this summer, they seem to be able to hit anywhere. You have to excuse me being in my gazebo doing these videos at the moment, but it keeps raining, and also this is the end of the red deer stag rut, so we've had a few weeks now of all the stags standing around like yelling their heads off, and now hunters are out obviously shooting deer, so it's not a good idea to be sitting in the middle of the forest taking videos. There are many things I'm having to reconsider. I think what these natural disasters are pointing to, it is climate change, but it's not what we're being told. But be aware of the possibility that we're entering a time of change, and prep to the best of your ability, but bear in mind that many of these preps just go out the window straight away. Anyway, food for thought. As always, be free.